Lord Alaric Vane, do you take Her Highness Princess Evelyn Volcrest as your lawful wife, to stand beside her before crown, church, and empire? I stared at the hand stretched toward me. White silk glove, a sapphire ring, a tiny scar beside the thumb. My heart stopped. That scar. I knew that scar. I had kissed it hundreds of times. Evelyn received it during the siege of Lorne, 9 years after our wedding. 9 years from, I looked up, St. Aurelius Cathedral. Golden morning light poured through stained glass windows and scattered across hundreds of nobles seated beneath the vaulted ceiling. House Volcrest banners hung beside my family's silver hawk. The high priest stood before me. Behind him, the emperor watched from his elevated throne, and directly across from me stood my wife. Except she wasn't my wife. Not yet. She was 24 again. Beautiful, proud, untouched by 12 years of war, ambition, betrayal, and regret. My hands began trembling. No, impossible. I remembered dying. Not vaguely. Not like a nightmare fading after sunrise. I remembered every second. The eastern gate had already collapsed. My armor was soaked in blood. Evelyn's carriage was disappearing through the smoke, while enemy cavalry poured into the avenue behind her. There had been one way to stop them. Someone had to close the iron gate manually. From the outside, I had done it. An arrow entered beneath my ribs. Another struck my shoulder. The third went through my throat. My last memory had been the sound of Evelyn's carriage wheels disappearing into the distance. I had died at 38. Yet now, Lord Alaric? The high priest's voice dragged me back. I looked down at my hands. No scars. No calluses from years of sword training. No old wound across my left palm. 26. I was 26 again. The high priest smiled awkwardly. Your answer? A strange calm descended over me. I looked at Evelyn. In my first life, I had answered immediately. I remembered exactly what I had said. With my life, my name, and everything I possess. God, what a fool I had been. I opened my mouth. Then the cathedral doors slammed open. Boom. Hundreds of heads turned. A man stood beneath the enormous doorway. Tall, black hair, white military coat, gold braid across one shoulder. Lucien Armand, my wife's first love. The man whose name she whispered while asleep. The man whose letters she kept locked inside the drawer she thought I never opened. The man she had chosen over me again and again without ever officially leaving me. But Lucien wasn't supposed to be here. In my first life, he had been stationed 600 miles away. He didn't return to the capital until 4 months after our wedding. Yet now he stood inside the cathedral, breathing hard, staring directly at Evelyn. A cup struck the marble floor. Crash. Everyone looked at the bride. Evelyn's face had gone completely white. Her hand shook. Her lips parted. And then she whispered something that only the people closest to the altar could hear. Lucien, she took one step forward. Tears appeared in her eyes. You really came back. My blood turned cold. Not you came. Not you returned from the border. You came back. Lucien stared at her. Something passed between them. Recognition. Not the recognition of two lovers reunited after months apart. Something deeper. Something impossible. Evelyn touched her collarbone. I almost stopped breathing. That gesture, during the 9th year of our marriage. An assassin's blade had cut her beneath the collarbone. Whenever she became anxious afterward, she unconsciously touched the scar. But there was no scar now. The attack hadn't happened yet. Still, her fingers went directly to the exact place. Once. Twice. Then she looked around the cathedral as if seeing ghosts. The high priest frowned. Your Highness? Evelyn ignored him. She looked at the banners, the emperor, the ceremonial candles, then at me. For one heartbeat, terror filled her eyes. She knew. She remembered. My wife had returned too. I almost laughed. Of course. Of course fate would have this kind of cruelty. One lifetime hadn't been enough. Evelyn suddenly lifted both hands and tore the bridal veil from her hair. Gasps filled the cathedral. Stopped the ceremony. The high priest froze. The emperor stood. Evelyn. Her father didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Half the room visibly recoiled. But Evelyn didn't look at him. She stared at Lucien. In my first life, she had always been careful, political, controlled. She buried her love for him beneath duty because she needed House Vane, needed my money, my connections, my family's military loyalty. Apparently dying once had cured her of caution. Father, she said, I will not marry Alaric. Silence. Then chaos. What? Has she lost her mind? On the altar? House Vane will never accept. I heard everything. I felt almost nothing. Perhaps that was what death did. It burned certain weaknesses out of a man. The Emperor descended one step. You signed a covenant. I know. You swore before the Imperial Council. I know. And now? Evelyn lifted her chin. Now I'm correcting a mistake. Her eyes moved to me. There it was. Pity. She pitied me. Even now. Alaric. I waited. Her voice softened. You won't understand this today. Almost the same words she'd spoken in my previous life, when she had sent me away from her birthday banquet because Lucien had returned wounded from battle. You won't understand. When she gave Lucien the command I had earned. You won't understand. When she used my family treasury to settle his debts. You won't understand. When she abandoned the Western defense line because Lucien was trapped behind enemy territory. Always the same sentence. This time, I did understand. Perfectly. She continued. I spent too many years living for duty. A tear slipped down her cheek. I won't do it again. Again. Several nobles noticed the word. Her father certainly did. But Evelyn was too emotional to care. She turned toward Lucien. He is the man I should have chosen from the beginning. Lucien stepped forward. The bastard looked almost noble. He reached for her. Evelyn. She crossed the space between them and embraced him. At our wedding. Before 600 nobles. I heard someone behind me whisper. Poor Vane. Another voice. He'll challenge Armand. No. He'll beg her first. They knew the old me. Everyone did. The man who had spent 7 years loving Evelyn with humiliating consistency. The man who had accepted every cold glance because one smile from her could erase a month of pain. Even Evelyn knew him. Especially Evelyn. She slowly looked over Lucien's shoulder. Our eyes met. There was expectation in hers. She was waiting. For anger. For desperation. Perhaps for me to walk down the steps and demand that she reconsider. Instead, I looked at the ceremonial ring on my finger, then pulled it off. The tiny sound of gold hitting marble somehow seemed louder than the whispers. Clink. Evelyn stiffened. I turned toward the high priest. The ceremony is cancelled. He blinked. Lord Alaric. I heard Her Highness clearly. I removed the silver clasp bearing the Volcrest crest from my ceremonial coat. I placed it beside the ring. Then I looked at Evelyn. For 7 years, I believed marriage required 2 people to choose each other. Her expression changed slightly. I was wrong. Lucien frowned. I smiled. One person's decision is enough to end it. Evelyn stepped away from him. Alaric. There was something strange in her voice now. Not regret. Not yet. Confusion. This wasn't how I was supposed to behave. Good. She had remembered the future. But she had remembered the wrong man. The Alaric Vane she remembered had died at the Eastern Gate. I bowed once. May you finally have the life you wanted. Your Highness. Then I turned away. Wait. I stopped. Evelyn's expression tightened. That's all. A few nobles exchanged looks. I almost smiled again. What else would you like? She hesitated. Perhaps even she realized how absurd the question sounded. You're not going to ask why? I already know why. That frightened her. Only for a second. But I saw it. Then you understand. Yes. I looked at Lucien. Then back at her. Better than you think. I started walking. The crowd parted. Every step felt lighter. 7 years of courtship. 12 years of marriage. 19 years of believing patience could turn obligation into love. Gone in 20 seconds. I had almost reached the cathedral doors when Lucien spoke. 43 days. I stopped. He wasn't talking to me. His voice was low. He thought only Evelyn could hear. But St. Aurelius Cathedral had perfect acoustics. The Black River floods in 43 days. My fingers tightened. Lucien continued. By the western grain warehouses before House Durin does. Evelyn inhaled sharply. You remember that? I remember enough. For the first time since awakening. Genuine alarm cut through my calm. The Black River flood. 43 days after our wedding. Exactly. In my first life. 3 counties lost their harvests. Grain prices tripled. House Durin made a fortune because they had purchased warehouses months earlier. Lucien shouldn't know. Unless, I turned slightly. He was smiling at Evelyn. And she was smiling back. 2 people. Both holding pieces of tomorrow. Perhaps 3. I walked out anyway. I needed distance. Information. Time. I had barely descended the cathedral stairs when horns sounded from the avenue. Not Volcrest horns. Imperial horns. Different empire. Different crown. The crowd behind me stirred. I looked up. 12 black horses approached. Behind them rolled a carriage lacquered in midnight black, its doors marked by a golden sun pierced by a sword. My body went still. The Varian crest. Impossible. In my first life. The Varian delegation arrived in the capital 6 months later. The carriage stopped. A guard opened the door. A woman stepped down. Black and gold gown. Dark hair pinned beneath a narrow imperial crown. Eyes like winter steel. Empress Serafina Vare. The future Iron Empress. The woman who would conquer 4 kingdoms. The woman Evelyn had feared more than any army. In my first life, I had met Serafina only 3 times. The last time, she had looked at Evelyn across a negotiation table and said, "One day you'll discover that loyalty is the rarest currency in the world." I hadn't understood why she'd looked at me afterward. Now Serafina climbed the cathedral stairs. She stopped directly before me. Her gaze moved past my shoulder, toward Evelyn and Lucien, then to the abandoned ring visible near the altar. "So," she said, "I'm not too late." I frowned. "Your Majesty?" Behind me, Evelyn spoke sharply. "Serafina? Fear. Real fear. Interesting." Serafina ignored her. She studied me for several seconds, then extended her hand. The cathedral became silent for the second time that morning. "Lord Alaric Vane." "Yes. I came here expecting to attend a wedding." Her mouth curved slightly. Apparently, I arrived for a cancellation. No one laughed. Serafina took another step. Fortunately, I dislike wasted ceremonies. My pulse slowed. Something impossible was about to happen. She looked directly into my eyes. "Marry me." Someone dropped a chair. The Emperor swore. Evelyn actually laughed. Not because she found it amusing, because she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You?" She stared at Serafina. "Marry Alaric?" Serafina finally looked at her. "Is there a problem?" Evelyn's expression shifted. Then I understood. She remembered Serafina's future. The rebellions, the assassinations, the famine, the Northern War, the provinces lost. She thought Serafina was doomed, and therefore she thought I was being offered a seat aboard a sinking ship. Evelyn looked at me. For the first time since abandoning me, confidence returned to her eyes. She almost seemed relieved. "Alaric." I raised an eyebrow. "Don't do this because you're angry." There it was. She still thought my life revolved around reacting to hers. "You know nothing about her." Perhaps not. But I knew what 12 years beside Evelyn had given me. A grave that made uncertainty strangely attractive. Serafina kept her hand extended. "I won't ask twice." I looked at it, then took it. "I accept." The cathedral exploded. Evelyn's face changed. Lucien's smile vanished. And Serafina squeezed my hand once. Not affectionately, like confirmation, like a general receiving the signal that the first move had succeeded. That night, I stood in the western wing of the Varian embassy. The marriage hadn't been formally completed. That required treaties, witnesses, imperial seals. But politically, the announcement alone had already detonated across the capital. I stared through the window. "Why me?" Serafina stood behind me. "You're direct." I died once. It improved my patience for unnecessary conversation. Silence. I realized what I'd said. Too late. I turned. Serafina wasn't confused. She wasn't shocked. She was smiling. Slowly. Sadly. "You always did make jokes when you were frightened." My entire body went cold. "What did you say?" She walked toward me. 1 step. 2. Then stopped close enough that I could see a faint scar beneath her jaw. A scar she shouldn't have yet. My eyes locked onto it. Serafina noticed. Her smile disappeared. "You died at 38. She said quietly. The room seemed to tilt. I reached instinctively for a sword that wasn't there. "How do you know that?" Her answer came almost gently. "Because I remember your funeral." My breath stopped. Serafina looked toward the moonlit capital. "And because, Alaric," she turned back to me, "you aren't the only one who remembers dying." I didn't sleep. Serafina didn't either. By dawn, 2 maps, 6 ledgers, 3 bottles of wine, and enough contradictions to start a war covered the embassy's strategy table. "Again," I said. Serafina leaned back in her chair. "You've asked me 4 times. Then answer a 5th. Her eyes narrowed. "How did I die? In my memory?" "Yes." "You didn't." Silence. I stared at her. She continued. "At least, not when you claim. You just told me you remembered my funeral." "I do." "When?" 2 years after the fall of the Valcrest capital." My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "That is impossible." "So you've said." "I died at the Eastern Gate." You disappeared at the eastern gate. I was shot through the throat. I saw your body later. My head snapped up. Serafina didn't blink. Where? Northwatch. That is 700 miles from the capital. Yes. 2 years later? Yes. I laughed once. There was no humor in it. You expect me to believe I survived an arrow through the throat, disappeared for 2 years, traveled north, and conveniently died again. I expect you to believe that our memories don't match. That silenced me. She pushed a sheet of paper across the table. A timeline. Year 1. Our wedding. Black River flood. King's illness. Red Haven discovery. Year 2. Northern rebellion. Assassination of Duke Halvern. Serafina's failed winter campaign. Year 3. Everything looked familiar until the 7th year. Then the lines diverged. In my memory, Evelyn and I remained married until year 12. In Serafina's, Evelyn publicly accused me of treason in year 10. I disappeared. The capital fell. 2 years later, Serafina found me dying near Northwatch. You were carrying this. She placed something on the table. A silver coin. My family crest had been carved into one side. Across the other was a symbol I didn't recognize. A closed eye surrounded by 4 lines. I touched it. Nothing. No memory. I've never seen this. You said the same thing before you died. I looked at her. What exactly did I say? Serafina's face became unreadable. You told me not to trust history. A chill moved down my spine. And then, you asked me to burn your body. I stared at her. Why? You died before telling me. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Outside, the capital was waking. Carriages rolled over stone streets. Church bells rang. Merchants shouted. A normal morning. Meanwhile, 4 people inside this city appeared to remember futures that contradicted one another. Maybe 4. I wasn't ready to count Lucian yet. What do you remember about Evelyn? Serafina's mouth hardened. She hated me. That hasn't changed. She blamed me for turning you against her. Interesting. In my life, I barely knew you. In mine, everyone believed you eventually became my ally. Did I? I don't know. How can you not know? Because you disappeared. She tapped the coin. And when you returned, you trusted no one. A knock interrupted us. Enter. A Varian officer stepped inside. Your Majesty, a message from our observers. Serafina took the letter. Read it. Then passed it to me. Princess Evelyn Valcrest had purchased controlling interests in 11 Western grain warehouses. I almost smiled. She's moving quickly. Should we stop her? No. Serafina studied me. The flood is real? Yes. And you intend to let her profit? Yes. Why? Because I want to know who remembers it. Over the next 6 weeks, Evelyn became the most talked about woman in the capital. She didn't hide what she was doing. That surprised me. She purchased grain, shipping contracts, river insurance, warehouses. Then she convinced her father to lend her another 4 million crowns. Nobles laughed. The Western harvest had been excellent. Grain prices were falling. Several newspapers mocked her. Lucian publicly defended her. She sees what others don't. I read that line over breakfast. Serafina sat across from me. Romantic. Stupid. You used to say similar things about her. I used to be stupid. Serafina almost smiled. Then her expression changed. You're nervous. No. You tap your thumb when you're nervous. I stopped. She knew that too. I hated how many pieces of me existed inside memories I didn't possess. 43 days. I said. Tomorrow. Yes. What if nothing happens? Then my memory is wrong. And if it does? Then Lucian knows something he shouldn't. The next morning dawned cloudless. By noon, I almost began doubting myself. At 2, black clouds appeared over the western mountains. At 4, rain began. At midnight, the Black River rose 12 feet. By dawn, 3 levees failed. 6 towns flooded. 2 counties lost their grain reserves. By evening, prices doubled. Within a week, they tripled. Evelyn made a fortune. Not a small one. A fortune. Her warehouses controlled nearly 30% of emergency grain entering the capital. She sold enough to recover her entire investment within 6 days, then kept the rest. The same nobles who mocked her began visiting Valcrest Palace. Lucian appeared beside her at every meeting. Within 2 weeks, newspapers were calling them the couple favored by fate. I threw one onto the table. Serafina read the headline. Jealous? No. Liar. I looked at her. She lifted both hands. Not of the woman. Of the victory. That was more accurate. Yes. She nodded. Good. Good. I don't want a husband who smiles while losing. We aren't married yet. 3 days. You're counting? I'm an empress. I count everything. I looked again at the newspaper. Evelyn had won. Completely. That mattered. I could have purchased warehouses too, but doing so would reveal what I knew. Instead, I had sacrificed the opportunity. Now I needed the information it bought. Lucien had predicted the flood to the day. That wasn't coincidence. But Evelyn's behavior bothered me more. She wasn't surprised by his prediction, which meant she knew too. So perhaps Lucien had learned from her. Simple. Except, 3 days later, something else happened. Gold was discovered beneath Greymoor. I nearly dropped the report. Serafina saw my expression. You remember this? Yes. Did Evelyn? Apparently. She had purchased Greymoor 19 days earlier. For almost nothing. The land had been considered useless. Now geological estimates suggested the deposit could be worth 20 million crowns. Serafina leaned against the desk. 2 victories. Yes. You're beginning to look worried. I am. Good. I frowned. Stop saying that. She smiled. If your enemy is genuinely dangerous, worrying is rational. Enemy. The word felt strange when applied to Evelyn, but accurate. That evening, the imperial court held a banquet celebrating the emperor's birthday. Evelyn arrived wearing gold. Lucien beside her. People surrounded them immediately. I stood with Serafina near the northern delegation. Eventually, Evelyn crossed the ballroom. Toward me. Alaric. Your Highness. Her eyes tightened at the title. I used to call her Eve. Never again. You look well. So do you. She waited. I didn't continue. Finally, she said, I heard you didn't invest in Greymoor. No. Strange. Why? You used to be very good at finding opportunities. There was a challenge beneath the words. She wanted to know. Did I remember? I smiled. Sometimes the wisest investment is watching someone else spend money. Her eyes flickered. Lucien appeared beside her. Or perhaps some men simply don't recognize fortune when it stands in front of them. Serafina joined us. Lord Armand. Lucien bowed. Your Majesty, I hear you're becoming a prophet. Hardly. 2 miraculous predictions in 6 weeks. Good instincts. Then perhaps you should predict something for me. His smile remained. What would your Majesty like to know? Serafina glanced at me. I understood. A test. I stepped forward. The Sapphire Fleet. Lucien's eyes shifted. Only slightly. The what? The Emperor's Sapphire Fleet. Yes. It disappears next winter. Silence. Evelyn looked at me. Confusion. Real confusion. Good. The Sapphire Fleet did not disappear. Not in my memory. I had invented the event 30 seconds earlier. Lucien laughed. Ships disappear. 47. His smile weakened. All 47. Yes. When? First snow. I lifted my glass. Remember that. Then Serafina and I walked away. Now what? She whispered. We wait. We didn't wait long. For days later, Lucien quietly sold every shipping interest connected to the Sapphire Fleet. My agent brought the documents before midnight. I read them twice, then laughed. Serafina looked over my shoulder. So he believed you? Yes. He doesn't remember the future. Not the way we do. Then Evelyn is feeding him information. That was my assumption. I placed the document down. Why would she believe my invented event? Serafina went silent. The answer arrived the next morning. Not from spies. From Evelyn herself. She came to the Varian embassy unannounced. No attendance. No Lucien. She walked into my study and threw a financial report onto the desk. Did you tell him? I looked up. Tell whom what? Lucien. About? The Sapphire Fleet. Interesting. I leaned back. Why? Because he sold everything. So, her jaw tightened. That event didn't happen. My eyes narrowed. You're sure? I remember every major shipping disaster from the next 12 years. There. Confirmation. She knew I knew. And she knew I now knew she knew. For a moment, neither of us bothered pretending. Alaric. My name sounded different when spoken by someone who remembered burying me. When did you wake up? The cathedral. She closed her eyes. Damn it. You? 3 days earlier. And Lucien? I thought the same day. Thought. Her expression changed. Fear. He knew things. The flood. Yes. Greymoor. Yes. You told him? The flood. And Greymoor? She hesitated. No. That was worse. Then where did he learn about it? I assumed he remembered. So did I? I stood. Until I invented the Sapphire Fleet. Evelyn stared at me. Slowly. She understood. If he remembers, He wouldn't react to an event that never happened. And if I never told him, someone else did. Her face went pale. Who? I didn't answer, because at that exact moment, the study door opened. Serafina entered carrying an imperial dispatch. Her expression was unlike anything I'd seen from her before. Cold, furious, concerned. She placed the document on my desk. Someone accessed my private treasury last night. I looked at Evelyn, then back at Serafina. What was taken? Nothing valuable. That doesn't make sense. It does if money wasn't the target. Serafina opened her hand. An empty velvet case lay in her palm. My imperial seal. Silence. The seal of Vare could authorize military transfers, bank guarantees, diplomatic orders. In the wrong hands, how long? Possibly weeks. Evelyn stepped closer. Lucien has been receiving foreign investment. I looked at her sharply. For Greymoor? And other purchases. From whom? House Reventhal. Serafina's expression hardened. A northern banking dynasty. One of hers. We sent agents immediately. By sunset, they traced the investment. Reventhal hadn't acted independently. They had received an imperial guarantee, signed with Serafina's seal. Someone inside her own government had financed Lucien. The authorization arrived an hour later. I unfolded it. Read the first line, then the second. My hand stopped moving. Serafina noticed. What? I handed her the page. She read it. Her face slowly emptied of emotion. Evelyn took the document next, then looked at me. No. At the bottom of the authorization was Serafina's stolen seal. Above it, my signature. Not similar. Not a crude forgery. Mine. Every stroke. Every habit. Even the slight backward hook I had developed after breaking my wrist at 16. Serafina whispered. This is exactly how it began. I looked at her. What? In my first life. She stared at the signature. The accusations against you. The room became very quiet. First financial transfers. Then military orders. Then letters. All carrying your handwriting. A memory returned. Not from my death. From months before it. Evelyn standing inside our library. Holding documents. Asking why my signature appeared on correspondence with her enemies. I had dismissed them as obvious forgeries. She hadn't believed me. Not completely. I looked at Evelyn. Her face told me she remembered the same moment. This happened before. She whispered. Yes, but not for another 11 years. Serafina folded the authorization. Someone has moved the timeline forward. I looked at the forged signature. At the stolen seal. At the investment that had helped Lucien win. For the first time since returning to life, I felt something worse than anger. Uncertainty. Because I finally understood the problem. Evelyn remembered the future. I remembered the future. Serafina remembered a different future. Lucien possessed knowledge he shouldn't have. And somewhere in the shadows was someone who knew enough about all of us to recreate a betrayal that hadn't happened yet. I had believed rebirth gave me an advantage. Instead, someone had been waiting for us to return. And they had already made their first move. The forged authorization stayed on Serafina's desk for 3 days. No one touched it. No one burned it. No one dared pretend it did not exist. My signature sat beneath her stolen imperial seal like a threat from a future I had already died in once. Evelyn left the embassy before midnight that night. She didn't apologize. I didn't ask her to. We both understood something had changed. Until now, she had believed rebirth made her powerful. I had believed memory made me prepared. Serafina had believed foreknowledge could help her avoid the disasters that destroyed her first empire. We were all wrong. Someone else was moving first. That should have made Evelyn cautious. Instead, 5 days later, she bought Redhaven Valley. When the report landed on my desk, I stared at the number twice. 8 million crowns. Serafina stood beside the fireplace. She paid cash. For that wasteland? For all of it. I leaned back slowly. Redhaven. I knew that name better than almost any other estate in the southern kingdoms. In my first life, it had changed everything. Evelyn and I had been nearly bankrupt after the northern campaign. Then silver was discovered beneath Redhaven. Not a small vein. Enough silver to refinance her entire government. Enough to pay for armies. Enough to buy the loyalty of houses that had mocked her. Within 18 months, Evelyn had gone from vulnerable princess to untouchable royal power. The court later called Redhaven her greatest stroke of genius. I had allowed them to. The truth was less flattering. I had found it. I had financed the surveys. I had negotiated the purchase. And I had put the deed in Evelyn's name because, back then, I thought building her power was the same thing as building our future. Serafina watched my face. You remember it? Yes. And she bought it before you. Yes. How valuable. I looked at her. Potentially enough silver to fund a kingdom for 10 years. For the first time since I'd met her in this life. Serafina swore. I almost smiled. Almost. She beat us. I said, you sound very calm. I'm not. Good. I looked at her. You enjoy that word too much. Her mouth twitched. 3 days later, Evelyn made sure the entire court knew. The Imperial Winter Banquet was supposed to celebrate a trade agreement with the Western Duchies. Instead, it became a celebration of Redhaven. Lucian stood beneath the crystal chandeliers surrounded by merchants and nobles. Evelyn wore crimson. She had always known exactly how to use a room. In my first life, I admired that. Now I studied it. Her confidence was real, not performed. That worried me more than arrogance would have. Lord Marrow approached me with a glass of wine. Vain. Marrow, didn't you once try to buy Redhaven? I looked at him. That information had never been public. He smiled. Princess Evelyn mentioned you considered it. Of course she had. She said you were too cautious. I've been called worse. Marrow laughed. Still, 8 million crowns for barren land. He lowered his voice. Between us, I thought she had lost her mind. And now? Now every mining family in the capital wants a piece. That was new. Why? He looked surprised. You haven't heard? Lucian chose that moment to raise his glass. Friends. The room quieted. He waited until every eye turned toward him. Then he smiled directly at me. Yesterday, our first deep survey discovered silver beneath Redhaven. Applause exploded. My stomach dropped. Too soon. In my first life, the silver wasn't discovered for nearly 2 years. Evelyn lifted her glass. Lucian continued. Preliminary estimates suggest one of the largest deposits in the southern kingdoms. The applause grew louder. People rushed toward Evelyn. Serafina appeared beside me. That wasn't supposed to happen yet. No. Then perhaps the timeline is accelerating. Maybe. But something bothered me. I remembered Redhaven's first discovery report. Not because I had read it. Because I had written half of it myself after the surveyor broke his leg. The first accessible deposits had been found beneath the eastern slope. Lucian's men were drilling south. I left the banquet early. Serafina followed. Where are we going? To Redhaven. The eastern ridge looked exactly as I remembered. Cold. Gray. Useless. Workers swarmed below. New roads had been cut into the valley. Dozens of drilling towers rose from the mud. Lucian had moved fast. Too fast. Serafina pulled her cloak tighter. What are we looking for? Something that shouldn't exist. We rode farther east. I found the old ravine before sunset. The stone face was intact. No landslide. No exposed mineral channels. That was when I remembered. Not the silver. The accident. In my first life, Redhaven hadn't been surveyed because anyone suspected precious metal. I had purchased the land for a water project. A private canal was supposed to connect 2 agricultural estates. Contractors cut illegally through the eastern ridge. Heavy rains weakened the slope. The landslide killed 17 workers and exposed the silver. Without that canal, the richest part of the deposit was buried behind hundreds of feet of unstable rock. I turned toward Serafina. We did lose. Her expression sharpened. But Evelyn owns the silver. That sounds significant. She can't reach most of it. Serafina looked down toward the drilling sites. What did they find? A shallow vein. How valuable? Enough to make the reports look spectacular. And the deeper deposit? Almost impossible to access with current methods. Her smile began slowly. So she spent 8 million crowns buying a treasure chest buried beneath a mountain. Essentially, Serafina folded her arms. You suddenly look happier. I'm trying not to. You're failing. I was. For exactly 48 hours. Then Evelyn overturned the board again. A delegation from House Reventhal arrived at Redhaven with engineers, equipment, and 20 million crowns in financing. Serafina slammed the report onto my breakfast table. How? I read it. Reventhal would finance deep extraction in exchange for 30% of future silver production. The agreement was aggressive, but technically workable. They solved the access problem. Serafina said, part of it. Enough? Enough to make Redhaven profitable. So she wins again. For now. I hated saying it. But denying reality was how men lost wars. Evelyn had taken an opportunity one created in our first life. then adapted faster than I expected when the circumstances changed. She wasn't merely repeating history. She was learning. That made her dangerous. Lucian was worse. Because the financing came from the same northern banking network connected to Serafina's stolen seal, which meant someone wanted Redhaven developed. Why? I ordered every survey report from the valley brought to me. Most were unremarkable, until I found one marked confidential. The latest deep core sample contained something beyond silver. Black crystal fragments. I had never seen them before. Serafina read over my shoulder. What is that? I don't know. The report included a note from the chief geologist. Unknown mineral. Extremely dense. Metallic response inconsistent with known ore. Recommend immediate imperial review. That had not happened in my first life. Not once. Redhaven was changing. The timeline wasn't merely repeating differently. It was producing things none of us remembered. 3 nights later, someone broke into the geologist's residence. He disappeared. His laboratory burned. Every black crystal sample vanished. By dawn, Lucian publicly announced that the unusual mineral report had been an error. I didn't believe him. Neither did Serafina. Evelyn apparently did, or pretended to. At the next council gathering, she cornered me near the western gallery. You went to Redhaven? Yes. You could have asked. Would you have invited me? No. Then why ask? Her eyes hardened. You're searching for something. So are you. She glanced toward Lucian. Alaric. Yes? For once. Don't make everything a contest. I almost laughed. You abandoned me at the altar, bought an asset I discovered in our first life, and publicly told half the court I was too cautious to recognize opportunity. A pause. And I'm making it a contest? She looked away first. That was new. Then she said quietly, Redhaven was mine in the first life. No. Her gaze snapped back. It belonged to my estate. The deed did. What does that mean? It means you never knew how the silver was found. For the first time, uncertainty cracked her expression. I stepped closer. You remember receiving the money? Yes. You remember the mine opening? Yes. You remember everyone calling it your greatest decision. Her face changed. I bought the land. Silence. I financed the canal. More silence. The landslide that exposed the deposit happened because of my project. Evelyn's lips parted. I finished quietly. You remembered the victory. You forgot who created it. She stared at me for several seconds. Then Lucian appeared behind her. Is there a problem? Evelyn turned too quickly. No. Lucian looked at me. His smile was polite. Lord Vane. Armand. I heard you've been visiting Redhaven. I enjoy barren landscapes. You should come again next month. His smile deepened. You may find them less barren. He took Evelyn's arm. She allowed it. But as they walked away, she looked back once. Not angry. Disturbed. Good. Then Serafina's captain arrived beside me. Your Majesty asked me to find you. What happened? He handed me a sealed letter. I broke it open. Inside was a copy of a military authorization. My stomach tightened. Another forged document. Except this one wasn't financial. It ordered 3 Varian border regiments to reposition south. The order had been issued using Serafina's stolen seal. And my signature. Again. But beneath it was something worse. A witness list. For officers had confirmed seeing me deliver the command personally. I read the names. All 4 men were real. All 4 knew me. And according to the document, I had stood before them 6 nights ago. Impossible. 6 nights ago. I had been with Serafina until dawn. Unless someone wasn't only forging my handwriting anymore. Someone was building a version of me. A traitor. Piece by piece. Exactly like Serafina remembered. History was no longer waiting 11 years to destroy me. It had started now. The Imperial Council arrested me at breakfast. Serafina gave the order herself. There were 12 guards, 6 witnesses, and 1 very satisfied minister. Lord Varos unfolded the military authorization before the council chamber. 3 border regiments were moved without strategic approval. His voice carried through the marble hall. 2 supply depots were left exposed. He looked directly at me. 48 hours later, raiders crossed the southern pass. Murmurs spread. Serafina sat above us on the black imperial throne. Her expression gave away nothing. Varos continued. The order bears His Majesty's consort designate's signature. I wasn't technically her husband yet. That hadn't stopped half the continent from calling me one. And, Varos added, Her Imperial Majesty's seal. He produced another paper. For officers independently testified that Lord Alaric Vane delivered the command himself. One officer stepped forward. Captain Holland. I knew him. We had played cards 3 nights earlier. He looked terrified. Did you see Lord Vane? Varos asked. Yes. Clearly? Yes. Did he speak to you? Yes. What did he say? Holland swallowed. That Her Majesty required immediate redeployment. I watched his hands. Shaking. Not lying willingly. Good to know. Varos turned. Lord Vane? I wasn't there. A few men laughed. Varos smiled. For witnesses. Then 4 men saw someone who looked like me. Convenient. It would be more convenient if I admitted to teleportation. A few counselors hid smiles. Serafina didn't. Enough. The room fell silent. She looked down at me. Alaric Vane. I met her eyes. Until this investigation is complete, you will be confined under Imperial Guard. Evelyn stood among the southern delegation. Her face changed. Lucian beside her looked almost pleased. I lowered my head. As Your Majesty commands. Evelyn stared at me. She expected outrage. Perhaps betrayal. Perhaps confirmation that Serafina would eventually become the monster she remembered. Instead, I allowed the guards to take my sword. They escorted me beneath the palace. The cell door closed. I sat down, counted to 20. Then the guard captain unlocked it again. He bowed. Your Majesty said the trap is ready. I stood. Good. Serafina entered 5 minutes later through the service corridor. No crown. No guards. Only a dark cloak and an annoyed expression. You enjoyed that. A little. You look too calm. I was arrested before breakfast. That generally upsets people. I knew it was happening. We agreed last night. Exactly. She leaned against the wall. Varos had been one of the loudest voices demanding my arrest for 3 days. He also controlled the internal security office responsible for preserving Serafina's seal records. Too obvious. Which meant either he was the traitor or someone wanted us to think he was. The only way to force movement was to make our enemies believe I had lost Serafina's protection. So we did. Publicly. Completely. Now we waited. We didn't wait long. At midnight, an intruder entered the restricted military archive. He bypassed 3 locked doors using Imperial access codes, then opened the cabinet containing deployment maps for the northern armies. Serafina's guards took him alive. Minister Kale. Not Varos. Interesting. He had served Serafina's father for 27 years. Serafina interrogated him personally. I watched from behind a one-way screen. Who ordered you? Kale sat bound to a chair. Blood ran from his lip. He smiled. No one. You entered my military archive for entertainment? I was correcting an old mistake. Serafina's eyes narrowed. What mistake? Kale looked directly toward the screen. He couldn't see me, but somehow, I felt as though he knew exactly where I stood. Some men should stay dead. My skin went cold. Serafina stepped closer. Who are you talking about? Kale laughed, then bit down. I saw his jaw move. Stop him. Too late. Foam appeared at his mouth. Poison. He collapsed before the guards reached him. Dead. Inside his coat, they found 3 things. A key, a black crystal fragment from Red Haven, and a letter. The letter bore Evelyn's private crest. Serafina read it once, then handed it to me. Proceed with the archive extraction. Lord Vane must be implicated before the Northern Summit. Signed, Evelyn Volcrest. I stared at the handwriting. It was hers. Perfectly. Serafina spoke quietly. Do you believe she wrote it? No. Why? Because if Evelyn wanted me destroyed, she wouldn't use a letter carrying her own crest. People make mistakes. Evelyn doesn't make that kind. Serafina watched me. You still trust her judgment. I trust her vanity. That earned the smallest smile. By morning, Evelyn had been summoned. She entered furious. Lucian came with her. Where's Kale? She demanded. Dead. Serafina said. Evelyn stopped. Lucian's eyes moved toward me. I was supposed to be imprisoned. His surprise lasted less than a second. Too short. I noticed. So did Serafina. The letter was placed before Evelyn. She read it, then looked at me. I didn't write this. I know. That answer startled her more than accusation would have. Lucian reached for the letter. It may still be genuine. Evelyn turned. What? He shrugged. Memory affects judgment. Perhaps you issued instructions you don't remember. Silence. Evelyn stared at him. Are you suggesting I forgot ordering treason? I'm suggesting none of us fully understands what rebirth did to our memories. Clever. Very clever. He wasn't defending her. He was planting doubt. I stepped closer. Interesting theory. Lucian smiled. You disagree? I think people who understand very little enjoy blaming memory. His smile faded. Serafina placed the black crystal on the table. Kale carried this. Evelyn's eyes widened. You found one. You knew about them? Lucian told me the report was false. Everyone looked at him. Lucian didn't move. The geologist was unreliable. He disappeared. I said, tragic. His laboratory burned. Also tragic. Your compassion overwhelms me. Evelyn ignored us. She picked up the crystal. For a second, something happened. Her fingers jerked. She dropped it. The fragment struck the table. What? I moved toward her. Evelyn was staring at me. Not the crystal. Me. Her face had gone white. What did you see? Serafina asked. Evelyn backed away. Nothing. Evelyn. Nothing. I knew that look. She was lying. Lucian reached for her. She pulled away from him. That was new. Get me out of here. Eve, now? They left. I started after them. Serafina caught my arm. Let her go. She saw something. Yes. What? I don't know. But we found out before sunset. Evelyn sent a message. Not through Lucian. Not through her father. Directly to me. Come alone. Old St. Mary's Chapel. Midnight. Serafina read the note. You're not going alone. She asked me to. I don't care. I thought empresses respected written instructions. We respect useful ones. I almost smiled. At midnight, I entered the ruined chapel. Serafina waited with guards 2 streets away. Evelyn stood before the broken altar. No Lucian. No weapon. No guards. She looked exhausted. What happened when you touched the crystal? She ignored the question. Instead, do you remember the Eastern Gate? Yes. Everything. Yes. The arrows. Yes. You died there? Yes. She closed her eyes. That's impossible. I felt cold again. Why? Because I went back. What? 3 days later. She looked at me. I returned to the capital. That had never happened in my memory. The gate was covered in bodies. She continued. I searched for yours. My throat tightened. You weren't there. Someone moved me. No. She shook her head. You don't understand. There was no body. Then I saw you. Silence. Where? Across the river. I stared at her. You were standing beside a black carriage. My pulse slowed. What crest? She swallowed. Veyre. Serafina. No. Impossible. I died before I ever allied with her. In your memory. Her voice broke slightly. In mine. You looked directly at me. I took 1 step closer. What happened? You turned away. That hurt her. Even now. You left with Serafina. No. I saw you. No. I hated you for 12 years because I thought you abandoned me. I stared at her. The chapel seemed suddenly too small. Then Evelyn said the sentence that destroyed the foundation beneath both our memories. When I died in my first life. Alaric. Her eyes filled with something between anger and terror. I still believed you were alive. I said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. I remembered dying for her. Serafina remembered finding me alive years later. Evelyn remembered seeing me with Serafina 3 days after my death. 3 people. 3 versions. All impossible together. Unless one of us was wrong. Or worse, unless none of us were. Evelyn looked toward the darkness beyond the chapel. The crystal showed me something. What? You. Where? Northwatch. The same place Serafina remembered my second death. And Evelyn's voice dropped. You were holding that symbol. The closed eye? She nodded. And you said something. My hands slowly tightened. What did I say? She looked directly at me. If we remember this life. Then I failed. A chill ran through my entire body. Not if I remember. Not if you remember. If we remember. As though another version of me had known rebirth was coming. As though he had expected all of us to return. And as though this second life wasn't a miracle. It was evidence that something had gone terribly wrong. If we remember this life. Then I failed. Evelyn's words followed me all the way back to the Varian embassy. I repeated them to Serafina exactly once. She stopped removing her gloves. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she asked, those were his exact words? Mine. You know what I mean. Yes. She walked to the strategy table and pulled open the drawer containing the silver coin she'd shown me weeks ago. The closed eye. For lines around it. She placed it beneath the lamp. You said something similar before you died at Northwatch. I looked at her. What? Not those exact words. Then what? Serafina's gaze remained on the coin. You told me. If I wake again, don't let me trust the first memory. I felt the room become colder. You never mentioned that. You never mentioned Evelyn seeing you 3 days after your death. Because I learned it tonight. And I wasn't certain what my memory meant. I stared at her. That excuse is becoming very convenient. Her eyes lifted. So is accusing me whenever reality becomes uncomfortable. For the first time since our engagement. Irritation sharpened the space between us. Good. Trust that never survived disagreement wasn't trust. I pointed at the coin. What else did I say? That I had to find the fourth witness. Lucien? I assumed so. And now? Now I assume nothing. I sat down. 3 memories. Mine, I died at the Eastern Gate. Evelyn's. She saw me alive 3 days later beside a Varian carriage. Seraphina's. I died 2 years later at Northwatch. One body couldn't live, all 3 versions. Unless the body Evelyn saw wasn't mine. Unless the man Seraphina buried wasn't me. Unless, I stopped. What? Seraphina noticed immediately. The witnesses. Which witnesses? The officers who claimed I delivered the forged military order. She understood. They may not have been lying. Exactly. Someone had forged my handwriting. Someone had reproduced my signature. What if someone could reproduce more? My face. My voice. My mannerisms. Seraphina frowned. You're suggesting an imposter. I'm suggesting we stop calling impossible things impossible. A knock sounded. Captain Darius entered. Your Majesty. Lord Vane. He placed a packet on the table. Our men found Minister Kale's second residence. Seraphina opened it. Inside were coded ledgers, several letters, and a miniature portrait. She handed me the portrait. Lucien. Younger. Perhaps 18. On the back were 2 words, third cycle. I read them twice. Seraphina took it. What does that mean? I don't know. But someone did. Lucien. The next morning. Lucien saved Evelyn's life. At least, that was what the entire capital believed. The royal procession was crossing St. Orlan Square when a crossbow bolt flew from a bell tower. Lucien moved before anyone else. He pulled Evelyn from her horse. The bolt struck his shoulder. Chaos followed. The assassin was killed. Lucien survived. By sunset, every newspaper in the capital carried the same story. Lord Armand bleeds for his princess. I read it twice, then threw it aside. Seraphina watched me. You don't believe it. No. Because you dislike him? Because the assassin fired from 80 yards into direct sunlight. Bad position. Terrible. And yet, Lucien moved before the bolt was visible. Seraphina leaned forward. He knew. Either he predicted it or arranged it. We investigated. The assassin had rented a room under a false name. Paid in cash. No family. No political ties. Too clean. Then Darius found something. The assassin's boots had been repaired by a cobbler 3 streets from Lucien's residence. The cobbler remembered another man paying for them. A servant from Lucien's household. Seraphina smiled without humor. There. Not enough. You want more? I want him unable to explain it away. We followed the servant. 2 nights later, he entered an abandoned bathhouse. Lucien was waiting inside. I watched through a cracked upper window. His wounded arm was still in a sling. The servant bowed. My lord. You missed the horse. The princess moved. You were told to aim wide. I did. Lucien handed him a purse. Leave the capital. The servant hesitated. The witness said. Lucien's face changed. What? The witness said there would be another task. Lucien grabbed his collar. You speak to the witness? No, my lord. Messages only. Where? The old post house. Lucien released him. Go. I remained still. The witness. The same unseen hand. But Lucien wasn't the witness. At least not according to the servant. Interesting. Very interesting. We searched the post house after midnight. Inside a hidden compartment were 12 letters. 11 had been burned after reading. 1 remained. Lucien, the assassination must fail. Evelyn must believe you chose her life over your own. Alaric will investigate. Allow him to. He needs to reach Northwatch before winter. I read the final line again. He needs to reach Northwatch. Seraphina's face hardened. That is where you died. In your memory. And where Evelyn saw you in the crystal. Someone was guiding us. Not merely attacking. Guiding. Toward a place. Toward a moment. Burn it. Seraphina said. No. It's bait. I know. And you still intend to follow? Yes. She swore. Alaric. If someone has spent this much effort leading me somewhere, I want to know why. That's precisely why you shouldn't go. I smiled faintly. You sound like a wife. Her expression changed. 3 days. What? Until we are legally married. You're still counting? I told you. I count everything. For some reason. That made me laugh. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had since returning. Serafina stared at me, then smiled. The moment lasted perhaps 3 seconds. Then Darius entered. Another message. He handed Serafina a sealed imperial document. She read it. Her smile vanished. What? She gave it to me. The northern kingdom of Ordal had mobilized 30,000 troops. 2 years early. History had moved again. Our wedding happened under military guard. No grand celebration. No 600 nobles. No jeweled cathedral filled with people waiting to watch someone be humiliated. Serafina wore black and gold. I wore silver. The high priest asked the same question I had heard beside Evelyn. Do you take this woman? Yes. Serafina looked at me. Not surprised. Amused. When it was her turn, she said, yes. No hesitation. No one burst through the doors. No first love appeared. No ring hit the floor. Simple. Strangely peaceful. Afterward, Evelyn approached me. Lucien stood 20 feet behind her. His shoulder remained bandaged. Congratulations, she said. Thank you. Her eyes moved towards Serafina. May I speak with you alone? Serafina answered before I could. No. Evelyn blinked. Serafina took my arm. You abandoned him publicly. You don't receive private access afterward simply because nostalgia has become inconvenient. Evelyn's face flushed. I expected anger. Instead, she lowered her eyes. It's about Northwatch. Serafina's grip tightened. That changed things. We moved to a side chamber. Evelyn placed a folded map on the table. I remembered something else. When? After touching the crystal. She pointed at Northwatch. There was a chamber beneath the old fortress. Serafina frowned. Northwatch has no underground chamber. In my memory, it did. What was inside? Evelyn looked at me. Records. Of what? Our lives. Silence. Not histories. She continued. Predictions. My skin prickled. Be specific. Dates. Decisions. Deaths. She swallowed. Your wedding to Serafina was written there. Serafina went still. When? Years before it happened. I stared at Evelyn. You saw this? Yes. In your first life? No. She looked frightened. In the crystal. Lucien entered without permission. Enough. Evelyn spun around. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making another mistake. He looked at me. Then Serafina. You want to know what third cycle means? No one answered. Lucien smiled. It means exactly what it sounds like. Evelyn's face changed. Lucien? He looked at her almost sadly. You remember one life. Then at me. You remember one. Then Serafina. You remember fragments of another. He tapped his chest. I remember 3. Silence swallowed the room. Evelyn whispered. You told me you returned with me. I lied. Why? Because you wouldn't have trusted me if you knew. Her eyes filled with fury. Knew what? Lucien's smile disappeared. That I've watched all of you make the same mistakes more than once. He looked at me. In the first cycle, Evelyn chose you. In the second, she chose me. In the third, Serafina conquered both your kingdoms. My pulse slowed. And this one? Lucien's eyes became cold. This is the first cycle where all 4 pieces woke at once. I stepped forward. Who is the 4th? He smiled again. That is the only question that matters. Then he looked directly at Evelyn. And if we don't find them before winter, his next words killed every sound in the room. Serafina dies again. Lucien gave us 7 minutes of truth. Then he began lying again. I knew because he smiled. Men like Lucien smiled when they believed information had become power. We sat around the same table like enemies forced into a temporary truce. Serafina opposite Lucien. Evelyn beside him, but noticeably farther away than before. I stood. Start with the first cycle. Lucien leaned back. You married Evelyn. I know. No. You remember one version of marrying Evelyn. I said nothing. In the first cycle I remember. You turned her into Queen of the Southern Alliance. Evelyn looked at me. Lucien continued. 7 kingdoms eventually answered to her. That never happened. She said. To you. His eyes moved towards Serafina. In that cycle, Serafina died young. How? Winter. Serafina's expression tightened. What does that mean? You always die in winter. A cold silence followed. Lucien continued. The second cycle changed when I interfered. Evelyn stared at him. You interfered? I knew what Alaric would become beside you. What would he become? Lucien laughed softly. The most dangerous man on the continent. I almost rolled my eyes. He saw it. You think I'm flattering you? I think you enjoy theater. I enjoy surviving. He leaned forward. Every cycle has different kings, different wars, different alliances. Then he pointed at me. But one thing never changes. When Alaric Vane supports someone, that person rises. Evelyn's face slowly lost color. Lucien looked at her. You thought the world chose you. No. Yes. His voice sharpened. You thought merchants followed you because you were brilliant. Generals obeyed because you inspired them. Nobles financed you because they respected your blood. He smiled cruelly. They trusted him. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Lucien turned to Serafina. And now they will trust you. Serafina didn't react. What happened in your third cycle? I tried to remove him earlier. Did you? Yes. What happened? Everything became worse. Lucien looked at me. You died at 29. And Evelyn's kingdom collapsed within 3 years. Her fingers tightened. Serafina conquered the south. Serafina raised an eyebrow. Efficient. Then your empire collapsed too. That removed her amusement. Why? Because the systems Alaric built in the other cycles never existed. I stared at him. You're claiming civilization depends on me? No. Lucien's smile returned. I'm claiming you are very good at fixing things everyone else is too proud to admit are broken. That sounded far more believable. Evelyn stood. You knew all of this? Yes. And you still came to the cathedral? Yes. You knew Alaric would leave. I hoped. Her face twisted. You didn't come back for me. Lucien hesitated. That was answer enough. She slapped him. The sound cracked through the chamber. Lucien touched his cheek. You used me. I loved you. Past tense. He said nothing. Evelyn laughed once. It sounded broken. I should have felt satisfaction. I didn't. I remembered too clearly what it felt like to realize the person beside you had loved an idea more than they loved you. Serafina broke the silence. You said I'd die in winter. Lucien looked at her. Yes. When? The first day? How? It changes. Poison? Once. Assassin? Twice. Battle? Once. Serafina frowned. That is more than 3 cycles. Lucien smiled. Mistake. Small. But real. I noticed. So did she. How many lives have you actually lived? I asked. Lucien's smile disappeared. Enough. Not an answer. Before we could push further, Darius entered. Your Majesty. He looked at Serafina. Ortal crossed the border. The room changed immediately. How many? 32,000. Commander? Prince Halric. I knew that name. In my first life. Halric invaded 2 years later. He won 3 battles because Serafina's northern commanders were divided. Not this time. I turned to the map. They'll cross through Valor Pass. Darius nodded. Our generals agree. No. Everyone looked at me. They'll pretend to. I remembered Halric. Aggressive. Proud. But not stupid. In my timeline, his real objective had never been Valor. It was the river depots east of the pass. Move the Third Army east. Darius hesitated. Serafina asked. How many? All of it. Lucien laughed. Wrong. I looked at him. In 2 cycles. Halric attacked Valor directly. Then he learned. Lucien's eyes narrowed. I continued. If he remembers anything through whoever is feeding him information, he knows we expect the old strategy. Serafina didn't hesitate. Move the third. Darius bowed. Lucien stared at her. You're trusting him with 12,000 soldiers based on instinct? No. Serafina removed her imperial signet. She placed it in my hand. I'm giving him 36,000. Even I stared at her. Serafina. The 1st and 7th armies too. Lucien stood. That's insane. Serafina looked at him. You've spent several lives trying to understand Alaric. She turned to me. I've spent several months watching him. A faint smile. I prefer my evidence. 3 days later. Halric bypassed Valor. Exactly as I predicted. He struck east and found 36,000 imperial soldiers waiting. The battle lasted 6 hours. Ortal lost 8,000 men. Halric retreated. The capital erupted in celebration. For the first time, newspapers stopped calling me Serafina's abandoned replacement husband. They gave me a new name. The Shadow Crown. Evelyn read the headline in silence. Lucien tore it in half. But the victory created another problem. The Imperial Council was terrified. An outsider now commanded 3 armies. Several ministers demanded Serafina remove me. She summoned them all. I expected compromise. Instead, she stood before the council and announced, Alaric Vane will retain command. Varos protested. Your Majesty, she continued, and effective immediately. He is Imperial Chancellor. Silence. and co-regent in wartime. Chaos. I stared at her. She had just handed me enough legal authority to challenge her throne. Afterward, I cornered her in the Western Hall. Why? You won. That isn't an answer. You need authority equal to responsibility. You barely know me. She stepped closer. I know what happens when powerful people force competent men to operate from the shadows. That sounded pointed. Evelyn. No. Her eyes softened. You. I had no answer. She touched my hand. For one dangerous second, politics disappeared. Then Lucien's warning returned. First day of winter. Serafina dies. We prepared for everything. Food tasters. New guards. Changed chambers. No public ceremonies. No travel. Physicians checked her daily. Winter arrived. The first day passed slowly. Morning. Nothing. Noon. Nothing. Evening. Nothing. At 11:50, Serafina sat beside me in her private chamber. She looked amused. Perhaps Lucien was wrong. Don't. 10 minutes. Don't. Alaric. I looked at her. What? If I die, you won't. If I do. I hated the calm in her voice. She smiled. Don't spend another life dying for someone else. 11:57, 11:58, 11:59. I watched the clock. Midnight. Nothing. I exhaled. Serafina smiled. We won. Then her wine glass slipped from her fingers. Her eyes widened. She touched her chest. Serafina? She collapsed. I caught her before she hit the floor. No wound. No blood. No poison. Physician. Her body convulsed once. Then went still. The physician arrived within seconds. He checked her pulse. Again. Again. Then looked at me. His face went white. Your Majesty, no. I am sorry. No. Serafina Vere was dead. Exactly as Lucien predicted. And for the first time since I had returned to life, I had known disaster was coming. Prepared for everything. Changed history. Won a war. And still lost. By sunrise, everyone knew. The Iron Empress was dead. By noon, half the empire began choosing sides. That was how quickly loyalty changed when a throne became empty. I sat beside Serafina's body. People came and went. Physicians, priests, ministers, generals. I heard almost none of them. Her face looked peaceful. I hated that. Dead people always looked peaceful. The living were left with everything else. Darius stood behind me. The council requests your presence. No. Alaric. No. They're discussing succession. She has been dead 6 hours. Which is why they're discussing succession. I looked at him. He lowered his eyes. They're afraid. Good. So was I? But fear didn't excuse scavenging. What is Evelyn doing? Darius hesitated. Her father has called the southern houses together. Of course. And Lucien? Meeting ambassadors. Of course. The board was already moving. Serafina's death had created exactly the opening everyone expected. By evening, 3 northern nobles withdrew support from my regency. 2 generals refused orders. House Reventhal froze imperial credit. Evelyn's influence surged. History snapped backward violently. 1 woman died. And suddenly everyone remembered why they had once feared weakness more than betrayal. The funeral was scheduled for 3 days later. Before then, Evelyn came to see me. Alone. She entered Serafina's private garden. I stood beneath the dead winter vines. I'm sorry, she said. I almost laughed. For what? For her. I looked at Evelyn. No triumph. No satisfaction. She genuinely meant it. That somehow made it worse. Lucien predicted it. Yes. You believed him? No. But he was right. Yes. She stepped closer. The southern houses will support me. Congratulations. Don't. Don't what? Turn everything into an insult. I looked away. She took a breath. Come with me. That made me turn back. What? Leave Vere. No. You have no blood claim here. I know. The council will strip your authority within days. Probably. Reventhal froze your credit. I heard. 2 generals already defected. I heard that too. Her voice rose. Then stop acting like you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Then come south. Silence. I can protect you. There it was. The reversal was almost beautiful. At our first wedding, she had walked away because she believed I needed her. Now she stood before me offering sanctuary. I'll give you command. She said. No. Half the Southern Council. No. Alaric, no. Her eyes filled with frustration. Why? I answered quietly. Because she chose me when choosing me was dangerous. Evelyn froze. You chose Lucien when you thought choosing me was unnecessary. That isn't fair. No. I looked directly at her. It's accurate. She stepped back. For several seconds, the old pride returned, then disappeared. What if Lucien is right? About? You. I said nothing. He says every kingdom you support rises. Lucien says many things. He says I only became powerful because of you. That bothers you? Yes. At least she was honest. She looked down. Because I'm starting to think he's right. For a moment, I saw the woman from my first life. Not the princess. Not the queen. The exhausted woman who once sat beside me at 3 in the morning and admitted she was terrified everyone would discover she wasn't as strong as they believed. Then the moment passed. I won't come south. She nodded. I expected that. She turned away. At the doorway, she stopped. I did love you. I almost answered, then realized it didn't matter anymore. Evelyn left. Seraphina's funeral filled the Imperial Cathedral. The same cathedral where Evelyn had abandoned me. Interesting symmetry. Black banners covered the walls. Thousands stood outside. Inside, nobles filled every seat. Lucien stood beside Evelyn. Their relationship had changed. I could see it. Distance. Suspicion. But politically they remained together. The high priest began the final prayer. Seraphina's coffin rested beneath the imperial crest. Black wood. Gold edges. Closed. I hated closed coffins. The prayer continued. May the sovereign return to the eternal light. Knock. I looked up. No one else reacted. Then knock. Knock. The high priest stopped. A murmur spread. Darius stared at me. Did you hear? Bang. The sound came from inside the coffin. Someone screamed. I was already moving. I reached it first. Open it. The priest froze. Open it. Darius tore the first latch free. I opened the second. Together we lifted the lid. Seraphina sat up. The high priest fainted. A woman screamed. Someone shouted. Gods, I couldn't move. Seraphina inhaled violently. Her eyes opened. She looked directly at me. 7 minutes. I grabbed her shoulders. What? I was dead for 7 minutes. You've been dead for 3 days. No. Her voice was weak. My body has. She touched her chest. I was somewhere else. Physicians rushed forward. Seraphina ignored them. Her eyes found Lucien. His face. That was the moment I knew. He was terrified. Not surprised. Terrified. Seraphina pointed at him. You lied. Lucien stepped back. What? The third cycle. His face emptied. Evelyn looked between them. What is she talking about? Seraphina climbed out of her coffin. Barefoot. Weak. Furious. I remember it now. Lucien moved toward the exit. Darius drew his sword. Stay? Lucien stopped. Seraphina looked at me. When my heart stopped, I saw another life. What life? All of them. Silence. The first cycle. She pointed toward Evelyn. You married him. Then Lucien. The second. You separated them. Then herself. The third. I conquered the south. Lucien said nothing. Seraphina's voice sharpened. But you weren't merely remembering. Evelyn whispered. What? You were changing them. Lucien laughed nervously. She died. Her mind. Seraphina crossed the distance and slapped him. Hard. You sent the letters. His face changed. The witness. I said. Seraphina nodded. Lucien is the witness. No, he said. Yes. You have no proof. Seraphina smiled. You used the same cipher in every life. Lucien went pale. That was proof enough for me. Evelyn backed away from him. You? Lucien looked at her. Eve, you staged the assassination. Silence. You fed yourself information. It was necessary. You used me. To prevent something worse. His composure finally shattered. You don't understand what happens if he reaches the end. Everyone looked at me. I frowned. The end of what? Lucien stared. Fear filled his eyes. Not hatred. Fear. Seraphina answered before he could. That's the other thing I remembered. She walked toward me. Slowly. The cathedral had become completely silent. Lucien didn't bring us back. I assumed that. Neither did the crystal. She stopped before me. Nor the founder priests. My pulse changed. Then who? Seraphina raised her hand. Placed it against my chest. Directly over my heart. Her expression contained something I had never seen before. Awe. And terror. You. I almost laughed. That makes no sense. It does. How? In every cycle. History resets after one event. What event? She looked into my eyes. Your death. Silence. I heard Evelyn inhale. Seraphina continued. Not mine. Not hers. Not Lucien's. Yours. My mind rejected it. No. In the first cycle. You died at Northwatch. History reset. Lucian shouted. Stop. Serafina ignored him. In the second, you were executed for treason. History reset. Serafina. In the third, Lucian had you assassinated at 29. Lucian lunged forward. Darius slammed him to the floor. Serafina never looked away from me. And history reset. Evelyn stared at Lucian. You killed him? Lucian struggled against the guards. You don't understand. Then explain. He stopped fighting. His eyes found mine. For the first time, the arrogance was gone. You think rebirth is a gift? I said nothing. He laughed bitterly. It isn't. He looked around the cathedral. It is his refusal. My refusal to what? Lucian's answer came quietly. To stay dead. The words settled over us. Then Serafina revealed the final piece. In the 7 minutes my heart stopped. I saw the moment before every reset. Her hand remained over my heart. You were always there. Dead. Yes. And she swallowed. Someone always asked you the same question. My skin went cold. What question? Serafina whispered. Do you accept this ending? I stared at her. And what did I say? Her eyes filled with fear. The same thing. Every time. Every life. Every death. One answer. No. Behind us. Lucian started laughing. Not because he found it funny. Because he had finally lost control. You still don't understand. He said. He looked directly at me. You aren't trapped in our rebirth. His smile twisted. We're trapped in yours. We're trapped in yours. Lucian's words followed me long after the Imperial Cathedral had been emptied. Serafina should have been dead. Instead, she sat wrapped in a black cloak in her private chamber, while 3 physicians argued in whispers outside the door about whether an empress who had been declared dead for 3 days could legally continue ruling. Apparently, resurrection had not been covered thoroughly enough in imperial law. Evelyn stood beside the fireplace. Lucian sat across from us with iron restraints around both wrists. Darius had wanted to put him beneath the palace. Serafina refused. Not yet. Lucian had laughed. You still think the prison matters? Serafina had answered. No. I think keeping you where Alaric can see your face matters. Now no one spoke. For people. For memories. Perhaps dozens of lives between us. And somehow every path returned to me. I hated it. Not because I feared power. Because I distrusted stories in which one man conveniently became the center of everything. Those stories were usually written by men trying to justify why everyone else should obey them. I looked at Lucian. Explain. He leaned back. I already did. No. You gave me a dramatic sentence. You always hated dramatic sentences. You always loved them. A faint smile. There you are. Serafina's hand tightened around her cup. Lucian. He looked at her. Explain before I test whether your death resets anything. That removed his smile. He looked at me again. The first time I remember dying. I woke 17 years earlier. Where? Armand Manor. How old? 19. Did anyone else remember? No. Evelyn. No. Serafina? No. Me? Lucian hesitated. You never told me. But? You changed. How? You began doing things before they became necessary. I frowned. Examples. You purchased Western grain contracts before the Black River flood. Evelyn looked at me. I shook my head. I didn't do that in the life I remember. I know. Lucian continued. You sent engineers to Red Haven before the landslide. You moved supplies north before Ortal mobilized. You prevented 3 assassination attempts no one else knew were coming. So you assumed I remembered. I knew you did. How? Because I tested you. My expression hardened. The Sapphire Fleet. Lucian smiled. I understood. You did to me what I did to you. In another life. A chill passed through me. What did you invent? The Emperor's Sapphire Fleet sinking during first snow. No one moved. That was exactly the false event I had used to test him. Evelyn whispered, no? Lucian looked at her. Yes. My skin went cold. I had believed the Sapphire Fleet test was my idea. Perhaps it had been. Or perhaps I had inherited it from a life I no longer consciously remembered. Lucian watched realization move across my face. Memories leak. Serafina frowned. What does that mean? You don't remember everything. Obviously. No. Lucian leaned forward. You misunderstand. You don't merely forget previous cycles. Pieces survive without context. He pointed toward Evelyn. She touches the place where she was stabbed even before the scar exists. Then Serafina. You distrust Minister Varos despite having no reason to in this life. Then me. And Alaric invents tests he already used in cycles he claims not to remember. Silence. I thought about instincts I had trusted without explanation. People I disliked immediately. Roads I knew without remembering traveling them. A phrase Serafina had said sounded familiar before she said it. Not prophecy. Residue. Lucian continued. That is why every cycle changes faster. Because we're carrying pieces forward. Evelyn said. Yes. Then why do you remember more? His face changed. Because I forced myself to. How? I left records. Where? Lucian smiled. Northwatch. Of course. Everything returned to Northwatch. I stood. We leave tomorrow. Lucian laughed. You think I'm going to take you there? No. I walked toward him. You're going to tell me where the chamber is. And if I refuse? I'll let Serafina decide whether resurrected empresses are legally allowed to torture prisoners. Serafina took a slow sip of water. I'm optimistic. Lucian's smile disappeared. Northwatch Fortress had been abandoned for 31 years. It stood against the northern mountains like the skeleton of a dead kingdom. Black stone, collapsed towers, snow packed against broken battlements. The journey took 8 days. Serafina came despite every physician threatening rebellion. Evelyn came despite Lucian ordering her not to. Lucian came in chains. I came because apparently every version of myself had eventually made the same mistake, or the same choice, depending on whom you asked. We entered at dawn. Lucian guided us beneath the ruined chapel. Behind the altar stood an ordinary stone wall. Third block, he said. Darius pushed. Nothing. Blood. Lucian said. Whose? He looked at me. His. I cut my thumb, pressed it against the stone. A click sounded beneath the floor. Serafina's expression changed. The wall moved. Not magic. A mechanical lock. Ancient. Precise. Behind it descended a staircase. Evelyn whispered, I've seen this. In the crystal? Yes. We went down. The chamber below was enormous. Shelves covered the walls. Boxes. Ledgers. Maps. Sealed letters. Hundreds of them. Serafina picked up the nearest book. Dust covered its leather. She opened it. Her face changed. What? She handed it to me. My handwriting. Cycle 7. I stopped breathing. Lucian smiled bitterly. You wanted records? I turned pages. Dates. Wars. Deaths. Marriages. Failures. Names. My notes. My thoughts. My handwriting. But I remembered none of it. Evelyn opened another ledger. Cycle 9. Serafina found. Cycle 11. Darius whispered, How many? Lucian answered, More than I know. I turned toward him. You said 3. I said I remembered 3 clearly. You lied. Yes. How many? 13. The number landed like a hammer. Evelyn stared at him. You lived 13 times. I remember fragments of 13. Serafina looked at the shelves. And Alaric? Lucian's expression darkened. More. I opened another ledger. Cycle 14. Another. Cycle 18. Then one beneath it. Cycle 23. My hands began to shake. No. Lucian watched me. This is why I was afraid of you. I turned. You murdered me because I kept records? I murdered you because I thought killing you would end it. And instead, we woke again. He laughed once. Every time. Evelyn moved along the shelves. Then stopped. Alaric. Her voice sounded wrong. I joined her. A large genealogy had been carved into the stone. At its center, House Vane. Except the family tree continued backward far beyond my known ancestry. Past the founding of my house. Past the old empire. Until it reached one name. Or really in the founder. Serafina whispered, Founder blood. I had heard the phrase. Every child had. A myth. When the continent fractured beyond repair, a descendant of the first emperor would supposedly appear and reunite it. A convenient story used by ambitious families for centuries. I laughed. No, Lucian didn't. Your mother's family hid it. I looked at him. You knew? Eventually. Why hide it? Because founder blood isn't a claim to the throne. He looked at the ledgers. It's something worse. Serafina frowned. What? Lucian pointed toward the deepest wall. There, carved beneath the closed eye symbol, were words in Old Imperial. Serafina translated first. The crown remembers what the world forgets. Beneath it, when the bearer rejects the fall, the 4 witnesses return. Evelyn whispered, 4. Me. Her. Serafina. Lucian. I stepped toward the wall. Why us? Lucian answered. Because we were closest to you at the moment the first cycle ended. I looked at Evelyn. My wife. Serafina. My enemy, or perhaps ally. Lucian. My wife's first love. For people tied by love, resentment, ambition, and betrayal. You said I was asked whether I accepted the ending. Yes. And I said no. Every time. Why? Lucien's voice became quieter. Because someone always died that you believed you could have saved. That hit harder than I expected. Evelyn. Serafina. Soldiers. Civilians. Perhaps all of them. I had spent my first remembered life doing exactly that. Fixing. Saving. Sacrificing. Believing every disaster was a problem I should have prevented. What kind of man would carry that instinct across 20 lives? A very tired one. I opened the newest ledger. The final pages were blank. Near the front, however, one sentence had been underlined repeatedly. The reset is not triggered by death. I read the next line. It is triggered by regret. Serafina came beside me. What does that mean? I kept reading. I was wrong. I thought my death opened the cycle. It does not. The choice comes afterward. I keep choosing again because I cannot accept what I failed to save. My handwriting became rougher. If I remember this, I must stop trying to create the perfect ending. There is none. Below it, the cycle ends only when I accept a life that contains loss. I stared at those words. Lucien said nothing. For once. Then Evelyn found another document. Alaric. She held a sealed letter. Her name was written on the front. To Evelyn. If she chooses Lucien again. She looked at me. You wrote this? Apparently. May I? It has your name. She opened it. Read. Her face changed. What does it say? Serafina asked. Evelyn didn't answer. Her eyes remained on the page. Then she looked at Lucien. You knew. He went still. Knew what? She walked toward him. You knew why you were supposed to separate us. Lucien's jaw tightened. Evelyn handed me the letter. I read. Lucien believes separating Evelyn from me will prevent the Southern Crown from forming. He is wrong. He is not trying to save Evelyn. He is trying to keep me politically isolated. Another line. In several cycles, Lucien approached Evelyn only after discovering her marriage to me created the strongest coalition. I looked up. Evelyn's voice shook. You didn't come back for me. Lucien said nothing. You came back to remove me from Alaric. I loved you. She laughed. You keep saying that whenever the truth becomes inconvenient. Evelyn, you knew I would run to you. Yes. You knew I would abandon him. Silence. Her face broke. Not because she still loved me. Because the central story she had told herself about her second life was collapsing. She had believed she had finally chosen love over duty. Instead, the man waiting for her had already known which emotional wound to touch. You used me as a weapon. Lucien stood. His chains rattled. I was trying to prevent him from controlling the continent. I almost laughed. I never wanted the continent. That doesn't matter. Lucien turned toward me. That is what makes you worse. His voice echoed through the chamber. You never seek power directly. You build systems, alliances, debts, loyalty. Then one day, everyone realizes the crown is irrelevant because every road leads through you. Evelyn stared at me. Lucien continued. In the first cycle, she became queen because of you. He pointed at Serafina. In another, she became empress because of you. Then at the ledgers. In another, you refused every title and still controlled more armies than 3 kings. His eyes burned. You keep pretending you're a supporting character while history reorganizes itself around you. I stepped closer. Then your solution was to manipulate Evelyn? My solution was to separate you from anyone who could turn your influence into a throne. Evelyn slapped him again. This time harder. You bastard. Lucien laughed. You think this changes what you did? She froze. He leaned toward her. I didn't force you to leave Alaric at the altar. Evelyn's face went white. I didn't force you to humiliate him. Stop. I didn't force you to spend your first life choosing me every time he needed you. Stop. You want me to carry all your guilt because I manipulated the board? His voice dropped. You still move the piece. Evelyn looked as though he had stabbed her. I stepped between them. Enough. She looked at me. For one dangerous second, I saw hope. Not romantic hope. Something simpler. Forgiveness. I didn't give it. Not yet. Perhaps never. Instead, I returned to the shelves. That was when Darius shouted from the entrance. Movement. Steel rang. An arrow struck the wall. Soldiers poured down the staircase. Not ours. Their armor carried 5 different crests. Southern, Western, Northern, coalition forces. Serafina drew a sword. How did they find us? Lucien smiled. I told them. Evelyn spun. When? Before we left. He raised his chained hands. You thought Northwatch was the end? His smile widened. It was the beginning. The attackers stopped above us. A herald shouted, by declaration of the 5 crowns. Alaric Vane is charged with conspiracy to seize the imperial throne through unlawful blood claim. I stared at Lucien. He had wanted us to find the founder records. Not to help us, to expose them. Outside Northwatch, 5 kingdoms had already mobilized. By morning, copies of my genealogy would reach every court on the continent. By noon, every king would know I possessed the strongest surviving claim to the old imperial crown. And by night, they would all believe I intended to use it. Lucien had finally found the one weapon more dangerous than accusing me of treason. He had made the truth itself look like treason. 3 fortresses fell in 6 days. That was how Chapter 9 of my second life began. Not with victory, not with revenge, with reports of defeat stacked high enough to cover my desk. Fort Varon, fallen. Grey Watch, fallen. St. Orlan Crossing, abandoned. House Raventhal froze another 18 million crowns of imperial credit. 2 western kingdoms closed their borders. The Kingdom of Meridia seized Varian merchant ships. The 5 Crowns coalition became 7 before the week ended. All because Lucien had shown the continent one family tree. Mine. The old founder blood had always been a myth people claimed to respect. Apparently, they respected it much less when it became real. Serafina stood over the war map. We lost General Caro. Dead. Defected. I looked up. Caro? Yes. He swore loyalty to you 3 days ago. He swore loyalty to my throne. She moved his marker to the enemy side. Apparently, he thinks you intend to take it. I don't. I know. The continent doesn't. No. I looked at the map. Lucien had understood the political weakness perfectly. Serafina had married me, then given me 3 armies, then named me chancellor, then co-regent. Now evidence appeared that I descended directly from the founder emperor. To anyone outside our room, the story wrote itself. I had seduced an empress, entered her government, taken command of her armies, then revealed a superior blood claim. It looked less like marriage and more like conquest. And Lucien made sure every tavern, newspaper, court, and military camp heard that version. The title they gave me changed overnight. No longer Shadow Crown. Now, the Crown Thief. I read the headline. Serafina took the paper from my hand. Stop reading those. I like knowing what people call me. Yesterday, they called you the Butcher of Northwatch. I never butchered anyone at Northwatch. Accuracy isn't fashionable. She threw it into the fire. I watched it burn. You could end this. Serafina turned. How? Denounce me? No. Strip my titles? No. Remove me from military command? No. Divorce me? Her expression became dangerous. Finish that sentence carefully. Despite everything. I almost smiled. I'm serious. So am I. If the coalition believes I'm no longer connected to your throne, they'll believe I surrendered my husband because 7 frightened kings shouted loudly enough. It may stop the war. It won't. How do you know? Because Lucien doesn't want separation anymore. She pointed toward the map. He wants you dead. That was true. And if Lucien understood the cycles correctly, killing me might reset everything. Which raised another question. Why would he want another reset? Perhaps because this timeline had become the one he could no longer control. A knock sounded. Darius entered. His expression told me the news before he spoke. 3rd Army lost the Hallow Bridge. I closed my eyes. How many? 4,000 missing. Serafina swore. Commander? General Reth escaped. I opened my eyes. Where is he? Returning to the capital. No. Darius frowned. No. Arrest him at the eastern gate. On what charge? None. Serafina looked at me. You think he betrayed us? I think Hallow Bridge cannot fall in 12 hours unless someone opens the western barricade. Darius left immediately. 2 hours later, General Reth was arrested. He carried a letter from Lucien. Another betrayal. Another loss. By the 10th day, the capital had begun rationing grain. By the 12th, crowds gathered outside the palace. By the 15th, the Imperial Council demanded I resign. I did. That shocked them. Serafina stared at the signed resignation. You didn't discuss this with me. No. I can refuse. Yes. I refuse. Publicly accept it. No. Serafina. She slammed the paper down. I died once this month. Do not test my patience. I leaned forward. This is what Lucien wants. Then why give it to him? Because he expects me to cling to power. Understanding slowly entered her eyes. I continued. He thinks I can't accept losing. The ledgers at Northwatch had said the same thing. Every reset began because I refused an ending. I tried to fix everything. Save everyone. Control every outcome. Lucian had built his entire strategy around that version of me. So I would give him exactly what he expected to see. Then remove the one assumption holding his plan together. I resign, I said, publicly. And privately, I looked at the map. We stopped defending everything. Her eyes narrowed. That sounds dangerous. It is. I like it already. The next morning, I surrendered my titles before the Imperial Council. Chancellor, Co-Regent, Supreme Military Authority. All of them. The hall erupted. Lucian's allies smiled. Neutral nobles looked relieved. Seraphina sat on the throne with murder in her eyes. She played her role beautifully. Lord Vane, she said coldly, your resignation is accepted. I bowed, then removed the black and gold insignia from my coat. For the second time in this life, I walked away from a public ceremony after surrendering a future everyone assumed I desperately wanted. The first time, Evelyn had expected me to beg for a marriage. Now 7 kingdoms expected me to beg for power. I did neither. By afternoon, Lucian sent his first message. Running again? I burned it. 3 days later, the coalition attacked the southern frontier. We withdrew. They took another fortress. Then another. The newspapers declared Seraphina finished. Lucian became bolder. Exactly as expected. Then Evelyn disappeared. That was not expected. I learned at midnight. Her rooms were empty. Her guards gone. Her father claimed ignorance. On her desk, she had left one sentence. I am correcting the mistake I should have corrected at the cathedral. Seraphina read it twice. What does that mean? I don't know. You believe her? I don't know. That answer tasted worse. 2 days later, we knew. Evelyn appeared beside Lucian. Publicly. At the Coalition Council in Valenne. The image reached the capital by courier. Evelyn in white. Lucian beside her. 7 royal banners behind them. The resemblance to our wedding day was almost cruel. She had chosen him again. The Imperial Council exploded. She betrayed us. She was never with us. Arrest every Volcrest loyalist. Seraphina dismissed them all. Then she found me alone. You're very quiet. So are you. I'm deciding whether to insult your former taste in women. Get in line. She placed the report down. Did you know? No. Do you think it's real? I stared at Evelyn's image. My first instinct said no. My second said I had made this mistake before. I had spent years explaining away her choices because I loved her. Perhaps she had simply chosen Lucian again. People repeated patterns. Rebirth didn't automatically create wisdom. Seraphina watched me. You don't have to defend her. I'm not. Good. The next morning, Evelyn made it worse. She handed Lucian our military maps. Not copies. Real operational plans. Routes. Supply lines. Weak points. The coalition moved immediately. Their main army, nearly 90,000 soldiers, marched through Kestrel Valley. The exact corridor marked as vulnerable. Seraphina looked at me. She gave them everything. Yes. Darius slammed his fist into the table. I'll kill her myself. No. He turned. Alaric, let them enter. Silence. Seraphina understood first. Her eyes moved to the valley. Then to me. You knew. No. But I remembered something Evelyn had said years ago. Not in this life. The first. During a war game. If I ever betray you, check whether I made the betrayal too obvious. At the time, I had laughed. Now I looked at the maps she gave Lucian. They were perfect. Too perfect. Every weakness exactly where an enemy wanted it. Every retreat route inviting. Every defensive position apparently undermanned. Evelyn had remembered too. Memory residue. Not enough to know why. Enough to know the move. She's lying to him. Darius stared. How can you know? I don't. Seraphina smiled. But you're willing to bet the capital. No. I looked at her. I'm willing to bet Lucian's arrogance. We let the coalition enter Kestrel Valley. 20,000. 40. 60. 90. Lucian rode near the center. Evelyn beside him. At dusk, the last coalition unit crossed the western ridge. Then the gates closed. Not literal gates. Armies. General Caro's supposedly defected force turned north. General Reth's captured soldiers retook Hallow Bridge. The Third Army emerged from forest positions we had abandoned 12 days earlier. Seraphina's cavalry sealed the east. The coalition was surrounded. Lucian realized it before anyone else. From the ridge, I watched his horse turn. He looked toward Evelyn. She moved away from him. Slowly, deliberately. then removed the white coalition cloak from her shoulders. Beneath it, she wore Volcrest red. Lucien's face twisted. You. Evelyn smiled. You were right about one thing. He reached for his sword. She drew hers first. I did make the choice at the cathedral myself. Her voice carried across the command ridge. So I'm making this one myself too. Lucien laughed. You think this makes Alaric forgive you? No. That answer surprised even me. Evelyn looked toward where I stood. I'm not doing it for forgiveness. Then she faced Lucien. I'm doing it because I'm tired of letting men explain my mistakes for me. The signal horn sounded. Our armies closed. The Battle of Kestrel Valley should have been a massacre. Instead, Lucien smiled. That was when I knew we had missed something. Again, he raised one hand. A second horn answered. From behind us. I turned. Darius swore. On the northern ridge, another army appeared. Not coalition troops. Imperial troops. Seraphina's own. Their commander rode beneath the crest of House Vare. Seraphina went still. My uncle, Duke Cashenvare, the last surviving brother of her father. He commanded the Imperial Reserve, 25,000 men, and he had just pointed them at us. Lucien laughed across the valley. You thought I came here to win a battle? Cashen's herald rode forward. He held a document. By blood and law, Duke Cashenvare accuses Seraphina Vare of concealing crimes against the founder line and unlawfully marrying the surviving heir to suppress his claim. Seraphina's face drained of color. I looked at her. What crimes? She said nothing. That frightened me more than the army. The herald continued. Evidence recovered from the late emperor's sealed archive proves House Vare ordered the extermination of House Vane 27 years ago. My body stopped. House Vane. My family. My father had always told me our relatives died during a border uprising. Bandits. Fire. Political chaos. Not murder. The herald lifted another document. The order bears the signature of Emperor Hadrian Vare, Seraphina's father. I looked at her. Did you know? She couldn't answer immediately. That was enough. Something inside me went cold. When? Her voice was barely audible. After Northwatch. Before we married? No. After? Yes. And you didn't tell me. I was trying to verify. How long? Alaric. How long? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. She had known for 3 weeks that her family might have murdered mine, and said nothing. Lucien's voice carried from below. Ask her why. I ignored him. Seraphina stepped toward me. I didn't order it. I know. I was a child. I know. I found the record after we returned from Northwatch. And hid it. Yes. The word struck harder than any excuse. She didn't lie. Somehow that made it worse. Why? Because we were at war. No. Because the council was fracturing. No. Because she stopped. There. The truth. I waited. Her eyes met mine. Because I was afraid you would leave. Silence. Behind us stood 25,000 soldiers. Before us 90,000 trapped enemies. And somehow the entire war narrowed to one sentence. I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny. Because I understood. Evelyn had hidden Lucien's letters because she feared losing him. I had hidden problems because I believed I could fix them alone. Lucien manipulated lives because he feared losing control. And Seraphina, the woman I had chosen because I believed she trusted me enough to let me choose, had hidden the one truth most likely to make me leave. Different people. Same poison. Fear. Lucien shouted. She is no different. Seraphina flinched. He saw it. She used you. Shut up. Evelyn snapped. Lucien laughed. Why? Because you recognize yourself? Evelyn's face hardened. He looked at me. Every woman you choose eventually decides your freedom is less important than keeping you beside her. Seraphina closed her eyes. For one terrible second, I wondered whether he was right. Then Seraphina removed her crown. Everyone around us froze. She placed it on the war table, then removed her imperial seal. She placed that beside it. Finally, she unbuckled her sword and knelt, not to me, before the assembled generals. Duke Cashen's accusation will be investigated. Cashen's herald stared. Seraphina continued. Until the investigation is complete, I temporarily surrender direct authority over the founder inquiry. Then she looked at me. If House Vare murdered yours, you are entitled to justice. Seraphina, if that justice costs me my throne, then it costs me my throne. Lucien stopped smiling. She pushed the imperial seal toward me. I won't ask you to forgive what I hid. Her voice was steady. I won't ask you to stay. Evelyn stared at her. So did I. Seraphina continued. but I will not make your choice for you. There it was. The difference. Not perfection. Not innocence. Choice. Evelyn had once decided what I should endure. Lucian decided what entire timelines should become. Serafina had made the same first mistake, then stopped before making the second. I looked at the seal, then at her. Stand up. She didn't move. Alaric, stand. She did. I picked up the imperial seal. Lucian's face tightened. Then I handed it back. You don't get to escape your throne because your father committed a crime. Her eyes widened. And I don't get to punish millions of people because I'm angry with a dead man. Lucian shouted, "You coward." I looked toward him. He wanted rage. Of course he did. He wanted me to kill Serafina, take her crown, fulfill the story he had told the continent. Founder heir overthrows Vare. Civil war. Collapse. Then perhaps my death. Then another reset. No, I said. Lucian stared. I finally understood. Every cycle. He had learned how to weaponize my regret. This time he was trying to weaponize my anger. Same cage. Different bars. I drew my sword. Lucian smiled. Then I pointed it toward Duke Cassian's army. Darius. Yes. Open the eastern corridor. His eyes widened. That allows Lucian to escape. I know. Serafina looked at me. Then understood. Lucian's smile disappeared. We opened the corridor. Exactly as I expected. The coalition broke toward it. Not all 90,000. Only Lucian's core forces. Cassian's army moved to support them and exposed its flank. Evelyn laughed. Oh. Serafina smiled. Now I see it. Lucian realized 1 second too late. The eastern corridor wasn't an escape route. It was a funnel. The Third Army struck from the forest. Serafina's cavalry hit Cassian's flank. Evelyn's southern forces turned. 3 armies collapsed onto Lucian from 3 directions. The valley erupted. By sunset, the Five Crowns coalition no longer existed as a coherent force. Duke Cassian was captured. 4 kings surrendered. 2 escaped. Lucian disappeared. Again, we searched until midnight. Nothing. Then Darius found a message nailed to a dead tree. Not for Serafina. For me. You finally learned not to choose rage. Below it, good. Then, now let us see whether you can choose loss. I read it twice. Serafina stood beside me. What does that mean? I looked toward the battlefield. Thousands of wounded. Thousands dead. Victory. But not clean. Never clean. Then a rider approached at full speed. He nearly fell from the saddle. Your Majesty, Serafina turned. What? The capital. He struggled for breath. What happened? Reventhal. My stomach dropped. The imperial treasury? Gone. How much? Nearly everything. Serafina went pale. The rider continued. And there is more. Of course there was. There are uprisings in 3 provinces. Darius swore. The messenger looked at me. Lord Vane what? Lucian released the Northwatch records. I stopped breathing. All of them. Yes. Not just my bloodline. The cycles. The predictions. The names. The deaths. Every secret. Every scandal. Every future war. By morning, millions of people would know that their rulers had lived before. That some families were predicted to fall. That some kings were supposed to die. That some marriages were political traps. That entire fortunes depended on disasters yet to come. Lucian had realized he couldn't beat us by controlling future knowledge anymore. So he destroyed its value. He gave the future to everyone. Serafina whispered. He just burned the board. No. I looked at the burning valley. He did something worse. He had given every ambitious man on the continent a reason to change history at once. From this moment forward, none of our memories mattered. No known future remained. No reliable timeline. No safe prediction. For the first time across all our lives, tomorrow belonged to no one. And somewhere in the darkness, Lucian was waiting to see whether uncertainty would finally break me. By sunrise, the future was worthless. That was Lucian's final victory. Every secret buried beneath Northwatch had reached the continent overnight. Kings learned which wars they were supposed to lose. Merchants learned which companies would collapse. Nobles learned which marriages would create powerful bloodlines. Generals discovered dates of future rebellions. Men who were supposed to die began changing routes. Families predicted to fall started assassinating their rivals first. Banks froze. Borders closed. Markets collapsed. History did not bend. It shattered. I stood in the Imperial Council chamber while 27 messengers shouted over one another. Meridia has closed its northern road. 2 grain exchanges suspended trading. House Kellen executed 3 of its own heirs. Why? They appeared in the Northwatch records as future traitors. Serafina closed her eyes. Evelyn stood beside the map. Her face looked exhausted. The records were never meant to be instructions. No, I said. They were warnings. People don't want warnings. Serafina replied. They want advantages. That was the problem. Future knowledge was useful only while few people possessed it. Once everyone had it, every decision changed every other decision. The world had become unpredictable. For the first time since I woke at St. Aurelius Cathedral, I knew absolutely nothing about tomorrow. Strangely, I felt lighter. Darius entered. We found Lucian. Everyone turned. Where? St. Aurelius Cathedral. Of course. The place where everything had started. What is he doing? Darius looked at me. Waiting for you. Serafina reached for her sword. I'm coming. No. Her eyes hardened. Alaric. He wants all four of us together. Evelyn frowned. How do you know? I looked at the closed eye symbol carved into one of the recovered Northwatch pages. For witnesses. For lives bound to the same reset. He needs us. Serafina understood. Then you definitely aren't going alone. I almost argued. Then stopped. That was another habit from my old life. Protect everyone. Carry everything. Decide what danger other people were allowed to face. So I nodded. All right. Serafina's expression softened slightly. Evelyn noticed. For once. She said nothing. St. Aurelius Cathedral was empty. No priests. No nobles. No banners. Only Lucian. He stood before the altar where Evelyn had abandoned me months earlier. A sword lay on the floor beside him. He wasn't holding it. That worried me more. Welcome, he said. Evelyn stepped forward. You destroyed the continent. Lucian laughed. No. He gestured toward the city beyond the cathedral. I gave people knowledge. And watched them panic. Exactly. He looked at me. That is what you still refuse to understand. I walked down the aisle. What? The future doesn't destroy people. His smile faded. The belief that they can control it does. I stopped 10 feet away. You released the records to prove a philosophical point? No. To force a decision. Serafina's hand rested on her sword. What decision? Lucian looked at me. His. Of course. Always mine. He lifted one of the Northwatch ledgers. The final cycle doesn't end when Alaric dies. I know. It ends when he accepts loss. I know that too. Lucian smiled. No. You understand the sentence. He tapped the ledger. You still haven't lived it. Evelyn's face tightened. What are you planning? Lucian looked toward her. Nothing. Then toward Serafina. That's the beauty of it. He opened the ledger. Every cycle. Alaric tries to save everyone. His eyes returned to me. Evelyn. Page turn. Serafina. Another. Soldiers. Another. Cities. Another. Enemies who don't deserve saving. He closed the book. And every cycle. When someone dies because he failed, his voice softened. He refuses the ending. I said nothing. Lucian stepped closer. That is why I could always manipulate you. You killed me in multiple lives. Yes. Used Evelyn. Yes. Manipulated Serafina. Yes. Started wars. Yes. Why? For the first time. Lucian looked tired. Not theatrical. Not arrogant. Old. Far older than his face. Because I wanted it to stop. Silence. I remembered 13 lives. He laughed quietly. Do you know what that does to a man? No. You stop loving people normally. He looked at Evelyn. You remember them dying too many times. Her face changed. You stop grieving. He looked at Serafina. You start calculating. Then me. And eventually, the only thing you want is an ending that stays ended. His hand moved toward the sword on the floor. Serafina drew hers instantly. Lucian raised both hands. Relax. He nudged the sword toward me with his boot. I looked down, then understood. No. His smile returned. There. That's your plan? Yes. You want me to kill you? Yes. Evelyn stared. Why? Lucian laughed. Because he won't. He looked at me. And because if he does, one of two things happens. Serafina's expression darkened. Another reset. Perhaps. Or, Lucian's eyes shone. The cycle ends. He opened his arms. So choose. I stared at the sword. Every part of me wanted him dead. He had manipulated Evelyn. Framed me. Started wars. Murdered versions of me I could not remember. Destroyed cities across timelines. He deserved punishment. Maybe death. But Lucian wasn't afraid of death. Death was his escape. His certainty. His next move. I kicked the sword away. His smile vanished. No. What? You heard me. You don't get to leave. Lucian stared. I stepped closer. You want another cycle? Silence. You want to wake 19 again and try one more variation? His face tightened. You want to convince yourself that the next life will finally be perfect? I smiled without humor. Sounds familiar. Lucien's eyes changed. He understood. We were more alike than either of us wanted to admit. Both of us had spent lifetimes refusing reality. The difference was that I tried to save everyone. He tried to control everyone. But the disease beneath both choices was the same. We could not accept a world that did not obey us. You will live, I said. Lucien went pale. No. You will stand trial. No. You will wake every morning without knowing what happens next. His breathing changed. And when people die, you won't get to restart them. Alaric, when you make a mistake, it stays made. Kill me. No. Kill me. His scream echoed through the cathedral. For the first time, Lucien looked genuinely terrified. Darius entered with guards. Lucien fought them, not to escape, to reach the sword. They dragged him away screaming my name. Then the cathedral became silent. I expected something. Light. Pain. A voice asking whether I accepted the ending. Nothing happened. Evelyn stared at the doors. Is it over? I don't know. Serafina looked at me. How do you feel? Terrified. She smiled faintly. Good. I almost laughed. You stole my word. No. She took my hand. I learned it from you. The Empire did not recover quickly. That mattered. There was no miraculous victory. No magical return to normal. When everyone learned the future, people made terrible decisions. Some also made better ones. A king predicted to become a tyrant abdicated early. A merchant family destined for bankruptcy changed industries. A general who had once started a war became a teacher. Other people tried so hard to avoid predicted disasters that they created new ones. History became messy, human, uncontrolled, and it continued. 1 week, then 1 month, then 6. No reset, no familiar voice, no second awakening. For the first time, I began believing this life might actually be mine. Evelyn abdicated the following spring, not because we demanded it. She came to the imperial palace with one document and no entourage. I'm transferring my royal claim to a constitutional council. Serafina read the paper. That will anger half your family. I know. Lucien's supporters will call you weak. I know. I watched her. Why? Evelyn looked at me. Because I've spent 2 lives believing power could correct regret. She smiled sadly. It can't. There was a time when hearing those words would have felt like victory. Now it simply felt late. She reached into her coat, placed a ring on the table. The ring I had removed at St. Aurelius Cathedral. You kept it? Yes. Why? I thought one day you would ask for it back. I won't. I know. That answer surprised me. She pushed it toward me anyway. Then throw it away yourself. I looked at the ring. 7 years of courtship. 12 years of marriage. 1 death. Another life. 1,000 choices I once believed defined me. I picked it up, then handed it back. Evelyn frowned. No. What? It's yours. I don't want it. Neither do I. For a second, we stared at each other. Then something absurd happened. We laughed. Quietly. Not romantically. Not bitterly. Just 2 people finally understanding how ridiculous it was to let a piece of metal carry 19 years of pain. Evelyn placed it back in her pocket. All right. At the door. She stopped. There's something I need to know. I waited. In the first life. Her voice became quieter. You died at the Eastern Gate because of me. I didn't answer. Didn't you? Partly. She closed her eyes. I knew it. No. She turned. I wasn't protecting you. Her expression froze. What? I was protecting the convoy. What convoy? Behind your carriage. She stared. 400 civilians. I remembered them now. Children. Wounded soldiers. Servants. Families. The gate had needed to close because enemy cavalry would have slaughtered all of them. Evelyn happened to be at the front. Her face slowly changed. For 2 lives, she had believed my final sacrifice proved something about us. That I loved her despite everything. That perhaps our marriage had secretly been deeper than she understood. It wasn't cruel to tell her the truth. It was cruel to let her continue building another illusion. I would have closed that gate even if you weren't there. Her eyes filled. She nodded. Once. Then again. I understand. This time, I believed her. She left. I never saw her cry. 2 years later, Serafina offered me the imperial crown. The council gathered in the rebuilt throne hall. Founder blood had become public. Half the empire believed I had the strongest legitimate claim. Serafina stood before everyone. If Alaric Vane chooses to claim the old imperial title, I will recognize him. Murmurs filled the room. I looked at her. You planned this? Yes. Without telling me. She winced. Poor wording. I smiled. Then faced the council. No. Silence. Someone actually gasped. Serafina raised an eyebrow. No. No throne. You realize people have killed entire families for less. I've noticed. Why? I thought about Northwatch. Lucian. Evelyn. 23 cycles recorded in my handwriting. All those versions of me trying to create the correct ending. Then I looked at Serafina. I don't need a crown to know who I am. Her smile appeared slowly. Good answer. I'm still keeping the Chancellor's office. Laughter broke through the hall. Serafina nodded solemnly. Greedy. Practical. That night, we stood on the palace balcony. The city below was alive. Not perfect. Never perfect. Markets still argued over Northwatch predictions. Politicians still lied. Families still fought. People still died. And I could not save all of them. The thought hurt, but it did not break me. Serafina leaned against the stone railing. Do you regret anything? Yes. She looked surprised. I expected something more heroic. I regret many things. Evelyn. Some. Lucian. Mostly not killing him on particularly annoying days. She laughed, then became quiet. When I died, I looked at her. For those 7 minutes, I saw one more timeline. I waited. One Lucian never remembered. What happened? You married Evelyn. Again? She never chose Lucian. I felt something strange. And no betrayal. No war between you. No public humiliation. And we were happy? Serafina shook her head. No. I laughed softly. Of course. You spent your whole marriage solving her problems before she could ask. My smile faded. She spent hers accepting it. Serafina looked at me. You became indispensable. And you disappeared. Not physically. I understood. There was no Lucian to blame. No. No betrayal? No. Then what went wrong? Serafina took my hand. You believed love meant becoming so useful that no one could afford to lose you. That hurt more than I expected. Because it was true. Even before betrayal. Before Lucian. Before war. That had always been the wound. I thought devotion meant erasing my own needs. I thought sacrifice guaranteed meaning. I thought being needed was the same as being loved. 2 lives had not taught me how to defeat Evelyn. They had taught me how to stop abandoning myself. Below us, bells began ringing. The anniversary of the Empire's reunification. Serafina looked toward the city. Do you think there will ever be another reset? I listened. No voice. No darkness. No impossible question. Only bells. No. How can you know? I can't. She smiled. That doesn't bother you? I thought about tomorrow. Unknown. Unwritten. Uncontrolled. For the first time, beautiful. No. I squeezed her hand. In my first life, I built a throne for someone else. In the second, everyone expected me to take one. And now, I looked at the city. At you. At the life that would eventually contain pain I couldn't prevent. Loss I couldn't reverse. Choices I might regret. And no guarantee of another chance. Now I think I'll just live. Serafina smiled. The bells continued. History moved forward. And this time, I let it.